mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 of Amazon Prime's Rings of Power. Or I believe it actually has "the" in it. The Rings of Power. So I recently finished watching these first two episodes. I actually watched the first one twice, and I'm going to explain why a little bit later. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to give my non-spoilery thoughts on the show as a whole so far. Like, just kind of like what kind of vibe I'm getting from it, where I think it might be going, what I think is working, what I think isn't, without giving any spoilers. So that way, if you are interested in watching it, you can feel free to watch this video and not have to think that I'm going to ruin something for you. So, to start, I want to say that I have some concerns. I thought the show was fine. For a show that has been essentially kind of been bragging about how much money it cost to make, and just, you think Lord of the Rings, you think Amazon, you think all this money, you think about it coming out at around the same time as a Game of Thrones spinoff, and you think in Amazon swinging for the fences, and they are from a financial perspective, but from a perspective of things that matter to the quality of a show, it's missing on a lot of stuff. And how much money you spent is probably the least important thing in telling a good story. You look at The Bear. The Bear is not going to be topped as my number one show of 2022. And it probably, compared to the Rings of Power, it probably cost 45 cents to make. And it's infinitely better. And it will, there's no way this show will complete its, I believe, 8-episode run. And I'm going to be like, yeah, that was better than The Bear. Absolutely not. It's just not possible. And I think I'm a little concerned because if you think about House of the Dragon, and you think about Game of Thrones, these shows seem to have a compelling story that they want to tell. And the money is spent around fleshing out that story and making it as entertaining and enjoyable experience as it can be. So it's like you have this set, simple story, not necessarily simple, but of political intrigue, backstabbing, all this kind of stuff, war. And then they take the money and they put the money into, the scenery, making, filming in like real places, building these sets. And then you get, some CGI dragons as well. But, a lot of the time the money that's spent there is spent on making everything feel real and making the story feel more robust. This feels like spending money was the top priority and everything else kind of came second to it. And I think that's what's hurting this show, because after 2 hours of this show, I don't even know where this story is going. It's like, so far they've kind of set up building, like introducing us to various characters, right? And this could be something kind of akin to the Fellowship coming together in the first Lord of the Rings movie. Maybe, they're showing us all these different characters, and maybe these characters will come together to fight Sauron and orcs and whatnot. But, if you have, say, 8 hours of television show, you can spend more time on that theoretically. But the Lord of the Rings trilogy had, if you're looking at the extended edition versions, like 13 hours to do that, and they still spent less than 2 hours on just showing us characters. And I think it's concerning for after 2 hours for me to not really have an idea of where this is going. The little bit that I do know being as far as compelling. And then I want to talk about some of the characters as well. I think the problem with the characters here is, okay, again, let's compare it to the original Lord of the Rings, right? You got Sean Astin, you got Viggo Mortensen, you got Elijah Wood, you got Orlando Bloom, fucking Ian McKellen, fucking Christopher Lee. Like, you got all these great actors, right? But aside from that, you have compelling characters. Like, each of these characters, every character in Lord of the Rings, from Merry and Pippin to Gandalf to Bilbo, they're all interesting and compelling in their own individual ways. They're all different, but they all are fun to spend time with. It's kind of like how I talk about the characters on like Ted Lasso. Like, these are all characters that I enjoy spending half an hour with every week when that show is on. And anytime I watch the Lord of the Rings movies, it's fun. It's fun spending time with those characters. These characters, man, like, these characters are really fucking bland. Like, they got like, I'll talk about them. I'll talk about the characters individually later. But the characters are nowhere near as compelling in this as they are in the original Lord of the Rings. And there's a couple of other things that I want to talk about. So I'm gonna get into specifics about these characters in a bit. But I want to talk about this quote unquote story a little bit first. So, because just to give you guys an idea, because the trailers don't show shit. Like, if you watch the trailers, you have no idea what this show is about. And I've watched 2 hours of it and I don't know what this show is about. But you have Galadriel, who we know from the original Lord of the Rings films. She's essentially hunting Sauron. You know, they kind of like give this like backstory thing before the opening like title card in the first episode. That revolves around the elves going to Middle Earth from their home. I think it was a place that starts with a V. I had it written down, but I didn't put it in my notes. They go there and they're going there to fight Sauron. And, well, they weren't going there to fight Sauron, but they end up fighting Sauron and orcs. Galadriel's brother is killed, which, trust me, it's not a spoiler. It's not important. Galadriel's brother, it happens in like the first 5 minutes. Galadriel's brother is killed, and she ends up on this mission that is still going on and has lasted for centuries, essentially to find Sauron. So we have that portion of her story, which, as simple as I put it, is the most compelling aspect of this show's story. Then we have some sort of storyline involving Harfoots, which I can only assume are ancestors of hobbits. They're very similar. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. We have a story of a different elf who seems to have a relationship with a human woman. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit when I start talking about the characters. And then in the second episode, we meet a dwarf prince named Durin. And it looks like him and Elrond, who is another character we know from Lord of the Rings, are going to be working together to help build some sort of tower, it seems. But I have thoughts on that, but like I said, non-spoilery, so I'm not going to get into it too much. But I want to kind of wrap this video up by talking about the characters, because I feel like the characters are what is going to make or break this show. Because even if after 2 hours I'm feeling like, this story is feeling a little bit thin, the little bit of it that I know, I still have no idea where this is going. You can still take as much time as you want to kind of build this foundation for this story, and then it could play out over the next 5 episodes and I could be blown away. I think what's going to make or break this show is the characters. So I'm going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about the characters are like kind of like the central issue that I have with this show at this point. So Galadriel, like I mentioned, we already know she was played by Cate Blanchett in the original Lord of the Rings films. I already explained her story, so I guess I don't have to explain it again, but that's the most interesting aspect of this show so far, is Galadriel's story. I also mentioned Elrond, who we know from the originals as well. He was played by Hugo Weaving. He seems to have a thing for Galadriel, and he's recruiting, like I said, these dwarves, it seems, to help build this tower. We also are introduced to the Harfoots. Like I said, they seem to be ancestors of hobbits. They, small, barefoot, big hairy feet. And we're 2 hours in, and they are, to call them uninteresting is a compliment. They are not even remotely kind of sort of interesting at all. There's nothing that's happened with them. They focused on one. Her name is Nori. It's short for Eleanor Brandyfoot, which makes me think that she might be maybe an ancestor of Mary, who was Brandy Buck. But they kind of focused on her, and she has discovered some sort of strange person who crash landed onto the planet like a meteor. They seem to be focusing on her and this person who crash landed onto the planet, but they keep showing us all the rest of them, and there's like nothing going on. They're incredibly uninteresting. And I think that's really harming the show because, again, you think of the hobbits in the originals, like these are all, even random hobbits that you just saw standing, outside of their house were entertaining. Like these characters are so fucking bland, dude. Man, the Harfoots are awful. But speaking of awful characters, Arondir is an elf that we meet as well. And he's a black elf. He's a black elf. He's an elf, but he's played by a black guy. At least he looks like a black guy. And he looks like Don Lemon, and Don Lemon has more personality than this guy. Like, this guy is the blandest fucking character. All he does is talk like this all the time, and he doesn't have any inflection. He doesn't care about anything. He just talks like this until you fall asleep watching the episode because he's so fucking boring. That's who this guy is. And remember when I said I had to watch the first episode twice? That's why. I fell asleep on this shit for like 20 minutes in the middle, and every time I would like periodically wake up, this boring fucking elf was on the screen. I'm so fucking sick of this guy. I mean, oh my God. He's done absolutely nothing. He talks like that all the time. Oh God, I cannot stand this character. And then he seems to be in some sort, I don't want to say relationship, but he at least seems to have a past with a human named Bronwyn. And I believe that Bronwyn and her people were followers of, I think his name was Morgoth, who is the being at the very beginning of the show who the elves go to Middle Earth to try to defeat. And they do eventually defeat him, which unfortunately we only hear about that. Like they say Morgoth was defeated. We don't actually get to see it because of course that would be interesting. But we skip all over that, and Sauron is like one of this guy's minions, I guess. And he's organized the orcs and all that kind of stuff. But they've been gone for a long time, so like a lot of people look at them as myth. But like I said, Galadriel's been hunting them for all this time. And as these two episodes wrap up, it does appear that both Sauron and orcs are about to make their return. But Arondir, the Don Lemon elf, has some sort of relationship with Bronwyn, and Bronwyn's people don't like elves. It seems that Arondir and his people were kind of sent to this area to almost kind of like police them. It seems like, and there's a lot of mistrust between both parties. But I think we are to glean that Bronwyn's kid is also his kid. There's a few clues there, but I think we're supposed to glean that that's his kid. And then we meet Durin, who is the dwarf prince. Elrond comes up there. They have beef. Elrond doesn't know why, but it's revealed. I'll save it for if you want to watch it, why they have beef. But they need to repair this relationship. We don't get that far into these first 2 hours, but the relationship needs to be repaired. The dwarf, I feel like this is going to be the second most compelling aspect of the show because these were the only interesting characters. Where Durin, the dwarf prince, his wife was entertaining. There's a scene with those two and Elrond having dinner that's pretty good. So I think that aspect of it is going to be good as well. But man, that Arondir and the Harfoots are going to kill this fucking show, man. I just don't know. So a couple of thoughts. Like I mentioned, I wonder if the money spent on spectacle is more important than all of the things that make a good TV show. The visuals are stunning, but even there, I feel like they play us because like all I heard about is $10 million an episode and it costs all this money. There's 2 moments, one in each episode with some big giant fucking monster. There's like a snow troll in the first one and this worm that's in this water. Water isn't like an ocean in the other one. And they play us both times by not giving us a good look at either creature. And that really pissed me the fuck off. Because don't tell me how much money you spent and then the snow troll is like engulfed in shadows and you can never get a look at it. And then they do like the worm is in like water and they do like, you only get to see like glimpses of it, and they do this thing where like they kind of like drop the camera below water level, then above, like someone floating or swimming. Cameras down, cameras up, cameras down, cameras up, and you only get to see like little bits of it. And I'm sure we are meant to take that as mysterious. Like, oh man, this thing's mysterious. I look at that as cost cutting. Like you can't afford to give me a good look at a good CGI monster, so you're only giving me darkness and glimpses, and don't you fucking brag about how much money you spent on this show and then cut corners on showing me the cool stuff. Like that pissed me off not getting to see that shit. the stranger that Nori, the Harfoot, is, I guess, harboring or helping, they're leaning really hard into that being Gandalf. And I'm fine with that. If it ends up being Gandalf, that's cool. But they're leaning so hard into it that you can't make it a big reveal. Like if it's episode 3 and if he says you shall not pass, I'll be like, all right, I knew it was Gandalf in the last episode. Like it's not gonna be a huge reveal because they're hinting at it so heavily. So like I don't know. When I originally saw him, I thought it could be Gandalf. I mean, well, it could be anybody, but I leaned toward Gandalf or Saruman, and they're leaning into it being Gandalf, and I'm just like, okay, I get that it's probably Gandalf. But like you got to just reveal it at some point because you're making it really obvious. So it's like they reveal it and it's like no shit, or they reveal it and it's not Gandalf, and I'm like, why were you fucking with me, man? Just like quit trying to trick me and just tell me who the fuck the guy is. And then lastly, I want to wrap up with something I thought was really fucking funny. So like I said, Elrond is working on building some tower. It looked kind of like the top, like Saruman's tower. But there was 2 of them. But I'm guessing like maybe one was like Saruman's, what ended up being Saruman's tower, and the other is the one where the Eye of Sauron was at. But again, it's been a long time since I've been this steeped in the lore, so I don't really remember or recall. I tried to look at it, and I'm like, it looks familiar, but whatever. Nope, not beside the point. So Elrond's working on building this tower with this guy. He's an elven smith. So like I'm guessing like a blacksmith who's an elf. And he's like, yeah, I need this built by the spring. And Elrond's like, yo, you don't have enough people for that. He's like, I know. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, and then Elrond says like, have you considered looking outside our race? I'm like, if this motherfucker proposed some goddamn slaves to build this tower, but he meant outside of the elf race. I'm just like, man, y'all bet I had no black people build this fucking tower. I'm gonna throw this whole show in the trash. So, there is potential here. I'm not abandoning this show by any means, but there are issues, period. It's not very compelling. It gets pretty boring at times. And I think it's because, again, these characters are lifeless, man. Like, they're like the they're like the DC version of Lord of the Rings. If Lord of the Rings was like fucking like Avengers Endgame, this shit is like Batman versus Superman. Like they've sucked all the life and all the enjoyment out of these characters and just given us characters that are as wooden as the fucking driftwood that Galadriel floats on in episode 2. And it's gonna hurt the show. Like they've got to do something with these characters because right now, if I'm being honest, it's a beautiful show that is fucking boring. And it's because of these actors and their very bland and wooden deliveries. And granted, a lot of the characters we've seen are elves, so you might be like, okay, well maybe an elf isn't gonna be as like animated. I get that. But does anybody raise your hand if you thought Legolas was boring? I didn't think so. So I will see you guys next week for episode 3. I will continue watching the show. Whether or not I continue reviewing it remains in question. I don't expect these videos to get much play just because there's going to be a whole lot of videos out there covering this show. I don't expect them to get that much play. And if you couple that with the show not being really enjoyable to watch, I will stop coverage. But for right now, I'm still going to give it a chance because we're only 2 episodes into something that I bet Amazon is probably thinking like they want to do 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons of. So, I'm going to continue to give it a chance, but there's a lot of work to be done here. And if there's a competition between this and House of the Dragon already won. So I will see you guys next week for episode 3. Peace.